All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Training for Hiking live Q&A. As always, my name is Rowan, and I'm answering your questions around training for hiking. Now, as always, how these work, if anyone is watching this live, if you do have any particular questions you would like covered, feel free to pop in the chat, and I'll do my best to help. Beyond that, I've had a few questions which have been sent through prior to this, which I'm going to work through and talk through everything. So, yeah, with that being said, let's get into it. So, first of all, actually, before we do get into the questions, I do want to do a quick little announcement about our new breathing mini course. Now, originally, when I first started these streams, I was talking about putting together a new breathing training for hiking course, which I was putting together. And over the months, I've been working on it and I've been plugging away with it. But it's kind of transformed as the more and more I got into it, the more I realized that there's other things that need to be said. And one mini course going into a certain subject, which I was going into, probably wasn't enough. So essentially, what I've decided to do is they're basically split up into two separate courses. And I'm going to be releasing two different mini courses around breathing training for hiking. And essentially, the first mini course should be ready to be released in the next couple of days. So I'm hoping to release it on Thursday this week, barring any technical issues or anything like that. The content's done. I just need to basically make sure all technical side of things is sorted. Now, this particular course is going to be focusing on some fundamental breathing drills to ultimately help improve breathing control and comfort when climbing up steep ascents. So they're going to be really, really accessible drills, very, very simple, going to be very, very useful for going up steep hills, will be very, very applicable for anyone to go high altitude or anyone who just generally feels like they just struggle with their breath on the trail. Now, this mini course is going to be completely free, and I am going to be putting a lot of announcements about it when it's ready to go through Facebook, through Instagram, through my email list, through our community group, and make sure it's just plastered everywhere so you can get your hands on it. However, if anyone did want to get access to it as soon as it's released, please just flick me a message, flick me an email, just let me know that you're interested, and then I can put you on the pre-sale list. And it's not really a sale, but basically, as soon as it's ready, I can get you set up and away you can go. Now, beyond that, then when we enter the more advanced stuff, which I was talking about initially, when we're talking about strength training for breathing, that's going to be released in July sometime. So that one's still got a little bit of work ahead, but I'll get this one out next couple of days, and then next month we'll release the next one. So, quick little announcement on that. So beyond that, the next questions we're going to be covering today is we're going to be talking a little bit about the final weeks of training if you are severely underprepared leading into an adventure. We're going to talk a little bit about knee pain while squatting and planks for hikers. They're the only ones I've had sent through so far, so it should be relatively short and sweet today. So, first question. This is one I tend to get a couple of times a year. Definitely worthwhile talking about. Is basically the question was like, look, I'm 2 weeks away from my big hike, but for a number of reasons, I haven't really been able to do any training up until now. How can I make the best use of this time? Now, obviously, in this type of situation, it's not ideal. And leaving our training to last minute is never going to be ideal because the majority of training adaptations that you make when it comes to strength, when it comes to endurance, when it comes to cardiovascular adaptations, that stuff, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a week or two, but it really does take time to kick into effect. And that's why I typically recommend hikers train for 12 weeks or 16 weeks or 6 months, because that gives plenty of time for those adaptations to kick in. However, obviously in this type of situation, due to one reason or another, that was not realistic, or it's just past. There's no point dwelling on the past. So if we're in this situation, yes, it's not the perfect situation, but we want to fit in where we can. Now, the natural inclination for most people in this situation, they're like, I've got 2 weeks to go. I just want to fit in everything I can. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go out and walk or hike every single day. I'm going to do as much walking as I realistically can fit in and just squeeze that in. That can work for some people. However, I don't particularly like this approach because one of the biggest risk factors for you as a hiker in regards to picking up aches, pains, and injuries is just doing too much too soon and going from 0 to 100. And that will happen if you're completely underprepared and then you step into your hike and you're like, oh my gosh, I've gone from nothing to a lot. But also, this will happen if I go from barely anything to I'm just hiking or walking every single day in that training. It does put a big risk in regards to picking up aches and pains. And if you're only 2 weeks away, You don't have a huge amount of time to manage that. Instead, if you put a little bit extra intention around this, a little extra thought, you can still squeeze in a lot of work during these 2 weeks with a much lower risk of things going wrong. Ultimately, over these next couple of weeks, we want to make sure we're doing a few things. Number one, we want to make sure we're keeping things simple. Over 2 weeks, there's no point trying to learn complicated workouts. There's no point trying to learn fancy exercises. Keep things simple. Number two, we want to give some variation to the body. We don't just want to walk every single day because it can be a little bit tricky. So we want to have an element of variation over these 14 days or these 2 weeks or whatever it may be to give the body a bit of space. And then also on top of that, we want to cover as many bases as we can in regards to preparation. We want to make sure we're just getting the body introduced to some things. It may not have months and months to adapt to it, but at least introduced to a lot of things. So this is what my recommendations would be in this situation. If you only have 2 weeks to train, haven't done anything, this is what I'd recommend. Number one, on the walking or the hiking side of things, I would sort of say aim to fit in some type of walking or hiking every second day. So if you have the time, if you have the inclination getting out and hiking every single day, whether that's for an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours, awesome. Get out, do it. That's great. Get as much hiking as you can. In amongst all that, if you can't physically get out on the trail, then we want to build this out like the other days with other sessions, which may be a bit more accessible. If you get the opportunity to do some stair or hill climbing, just find a local set of stairs or a local hill, go up and down that for 20 minutes, that could work really well. Even getting 1 or 2 exposures of this before you go away, it'll be tough, it'll be uncomfortable, but it'll be very, very useful for the body when you get on the trail. Or if that's not accessible, just some loader pack walking. Just whack on your pack, walk around the neighborhood for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But essentially, every second day, we want to fit some type of walking based thing. Typically, for these things, if we only have 2 weeks, we want to keep this pretty low intensity. Keep it slow, keep it casual. You're just really getting exposure to the time on your feet, or the pack distance, or just going up and down. They're the main things, but you don't want to push the speed too much. Keep it slow and intentional. Now, on the alternating days, you probably can still fit other things in. So what I typically recommend here is if you do have the opportunity on the alternating days, do some slightly higher intensity off-feet conditioning. So what I mean by off-feet conditioning is finding something you can do which doesn't actually involve you walking, doesn't actually involve you running, doesn't put pressure through the feet, but you can still get a cardiovascular response. So this might be being on a push bike or a stationary bike. This might be going on an elliptical or a rower or hopping in a pool and doing some swimming. Um, I fully understand if some of these may not be accessible. So in this situation, it may be worthwhile just going down to your local gym and saying, hey, can I get a 2 week gym pass? And as much as you may hate the gym environment, 2 weeks, you can probably get away with it. And essentially, in these sessions, what you can do is just push the speed a little bit. So your walking sessions are slow, they're casual, they're steady. And these off-beat sessions, you can push the speed a little bit. You can expose the body to these slightly higher intensities. You can expose the body to these slightly more challenging things. But because we're doing it off-feet with these types of things, it doesn't put the body at risk of picking up aches and pains. It's very significantly less chance of you picking up a sore knee from doing quicker biking than really, really trying to just do really quick stair climbing before you go. So push the speed, do some intervals, maybe 3 minutes quick, 1 minute slow, do that a bunch of times or whatever it is. But on the alternating days, fit that in. And then on top of that, fitting in some small amounts of strength might be useful because that in itself, that's the main stuff. We want to get exposure to cardio, exposure to this movement. That's the main stuff. On top of that, fitting in a small amount of strength may give you some good benefits. Now, during this time, if you've only got 2 weeks, there's no point trying to focus on full big workouts. There's no point trying to learn a bunch of different exercises. But if you just choose 2 to 3 key exercises which target certain areas of the body, which you can just repeat relatively consecutively, you can still get some good benefits, even from 2 weeks, if you just keep it simple. So if you're looking at something like this, what I would sort of recommend is we want to find an exercise which works the front of the thighs, so the quads. We want to work an exercise that works the back of the legs, so the hamstrings and the glutes. And we also want to work something that works the calves. If you can cover those three bases, that little workout itself will take you like 10 minutes. If you can do that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times before you go away, that can actually be pretty beneficial when you cover a lot of bases. So a really simple way of going about this might be doing some type of split squat. So if you're not familiar with a split squat, let me show you this one. So this particular video has a bunch of different options for split squats, and it gives you, a bunch of different things here. Essentially, this is just going up and down, up and down, up and down. Works the quadriceps, works a bit of the glutes. You can get a lot of work done with this in a small amount of time. Very, very, very useful. I'll share this particular video in the chat so you can check out the different variations. There's 8 different variations. You can choose a level of difficulty which works for you. So that's number one. Now, on the flip side of things, we would want to work, okay, we're doing the quads here. We want to make sure we're working something on the flip side. So doing some type of glute bridge could be really useful. So this variation, we're doing a heel elevated glute bridge where basically it just hits the hamstrings quite a bit. You could fit this in. Doesn't take a huge amount of learning, doesn't take a huge amount of effort, but this can be quite useful. Or if this is a bit too much, you could just have your feet on the ground and just do a normal glute bridge or whatever. But this will work the hamstrings. Can be a good option. And I'll pop that in chat as well. And then for the calves, just doing some type of calf raise. So this is an example of an eccentric calf raise where we're pushing one leg, 2 legs up, one leg down. Can be a good option. You can go up and down on 2 legs, up and down on one leg, or whatever it may be. But again, if you're working a little bit of calves, that'll be really good. And if we fit those 3 exercises in, something on the quads, something on the hamstrings, something on the calves, that itself can work out pretty well. And you would repeat this multiple times during this period. And what I would sort of recommend is you could sort of say, hey, I'm going to either do these before my walking sessions or I'm going to do them before my higher intensity sessions. And again, if you can fit that in about 6 times before you go, you get a lot of good work in. And then finally, if you're going down this route, no matter where you're at, no matter how underprepared you are, before your big trip, just give yourself 48 hours of full rest. So don't train all the way up to the last day. Give yourself at least 48 hours to chill out. So there's my recommendations. Obviously that's not an ideal situation, and I hope most of you don't fall into it. But occasionally it does come up. As I said, probably once a year I get a message from about people like this. So if you only have 2 weeks to train, they're my recommendations. Hopefully that can make a bit of a difference. So next up, and I will sort of say, anyone who is watching live, if you do have any particular questions, feel free to pop them in chat. I'm more than happy to cover anything you'd like. Now, the next question was sent through was about squatting. And basically the question was, I know squats are good for building strength for hiking, but they always cause pain in my knees. Do you have any tips to work around this? And this is a really common thing, squats in themselves, whether we're training for hiking or training for general fitness, a lot of people will do squats because they're a great exercise for developing quadricep strength, a little bit of glute strength as well. But yeah, a lot of people do struggle with getting knee pain with this type of thing in the hiking community. A lot of people get knee pain already. So there's a few things we kind of look around to adjust this. Ultimately, my recommendations here, there's typically 3 things that I usually look at for people to make sure this is comfortable. Number one, first and foremost, no matter what type of squat you're doing, whether you're doing a normal squat, a box squat, a goblet squat, a squat with a barbell on your back, or whatever it may be, first thing we want to think about is making sure there is some weight going through your heels. So what I mean by that is sometimes, let me pull up a video and I'll demo this video in a second. But in a squat, essentially what we want to be making sure is as we're going up and down, that our feet are relatively flat. Our feet are on the ground and we're pushing a bit of weight through the heels and also through the forefoot. So as we're coming up and down, you do feel a little bit of weight pushing through the heels. One tendency for people when they're squatting is sometimes they'll end up just pushing all the way through the front of the foot. And either the heels will pop up off the ground, which can be bad in itself, or they can have those flat feet, but they're really just loading up the front of the foot. The issue here is if you're doing this, it will just naturally load up the knees a little bit more, and it can lead to a little bit of discomfort. So if we use the cue of keeping our feet flat on the ground and pushing up and down through the heels, that will just shift the pressure a little bit away from the knees and a little bit more into the glutes, which is great. So first and foremost, have a look at that, pushing weight through the heels. Now, next up, if you're doing that, you're like, hey, it's still a little bit uncomfortable, then you can just do a variation like this, doing some type of box squat, where you're basically squatting from a box or a bench, or if you're at home, just from a chair or a couch or whatever it may be. And the idea behind this is you can use this box to reduce the range of motion or manage the range of motion so you can do this exercise 100% comfortably. Because some people, they'll come all the way down the squat and it'll just be the last little portion of the squat which causes a little bit of discomfort. Some people will sort of say go from a normal squat to just squatting off a box. All of a sudden, because we reduced this down and we've just got an end point here which isn't quite as deep, this is enough. And this is what you can do to get squatting comfortable. And this is really good. Alternatively, maybe you give this a go, you try it, and you're like, you know what, actually, this is no good. I can't really do this, and it's still uncomfortable. Well, then you can look at raising the box. You can use a higher chair, you can use a higher bench, or you can get a book or a weights plate or anything and just pop it underneath, and you can make it an inch higher, so you don't come down as far, quite as far. Try that again. Give it a go. If it is pain-free, fantastic. Go with that. If it's still uncomfortable, then make it a little bit higher. And ultimately, you can keep on playing around with your squat range of motion until you find something 100% comfortable. You may end up being like here. Oops. You may end up being here. Yeah, and that may be your range of motion. And that's great. That's fine. That's still going to be beneficial for you if you work through that. You may end up being here. You missed my pause. You may end up being there. And maybe that's your limit of range of motion. And again, it's not that big a deal. And essentially, what you want to do is just find the starting point for you, which is 100% comfortable, 100% doable. And then over time, as you get stronger, as you get more confident with it, you can just make it a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. You'll be able to figure this out. Anyone with knee pain can go down this route and get things going. Now, the final variation that may be um, worthwhile going through is doing something like a heel elevated squat. And I did have a video, but my video isn't amazing of it, so maybe I'll use someone else's. Is basically heel elevated squat. So the idea behind this, as we sort of said before, sometimes when we're doing our squats, as we're kind of coming up and down, what can happen is we end up loading up the front of the foot and we can't really put pressure through the heel, and that can lead to a little bit of pressure through the knees. One issue for this and one cause of this is we may be restricted from range of motion through the ankles. And if our ankles are really, really tight, maybe we just cannot physically do a squat without us loading up the front of the feet, without our heels popping up. So a really simple way of you getting on top of this is basically raising your heel. So what you can do is get a couple of plates or a couple of books or something like that, and you literally just pop it underneath your heels. And what that does is it changes the angle of the squat a little bit. It takes out the range of, takes out the limitation of your ankles and can actually allow people to squat much more comfortably. And essentially just go through the same squatting motion, but your heels are a little bit higher. Works out really, really well. Again, you can even get a little bit deeper, like they're a little bit more aggressive, like they're doing on this. I don't particularly love this version, but it can be okay. But I really do like this sort of heel elevated one. And if you wanted to combine them, if you're like, hey, actually, I have really, really sensitive knees, you could basically do this, but you could also do a box squat. You could raise your heels and then have a box which controls your range of motion. You never really have to go quite as deep as this. The version that I had, which isn't a great video, but it's a similar thing. This is like a hack squat. And it's the same thing. You can basically just pop your heels up on something, just change that, and it can be much more comfortable on the knees. So if you do struggle with knee pain while squatting, I would sort of say give one, two, or three of these a go, and you should be able to sort yourself out. No matter how uncomfortable your knees are, if you change the range of motion, if you change the angle, you'll be able to find something. And ultimately, if you try that and you're like, hey, it still sucks and my knees are still really uncomfortable, then just do something else. That's absolutely fine. There's plenty of ways where you can develop strength through the quadriceps, which isn't squatting, and can still be beneficial for hiking. So, plenty of options there. So hopefully that helps. And then the final question that I had sent through prior to this is talking about planks for hikers. And before I get to that, if anyone is watching live who does have any questions, want answered, feel free to pop up in the chat. I'm happy to answer absolutely anything. But the last question I had sort of sent through was talking about planks. And this is one that's it's super, super, super common. And basically the question was, look, I plank all the time, but it never gets any easier. Do you have any recommendations to help me improve? And in this particular context, this person trained in a local gym. They did a lot of circuit classes. They did a lot of HIIT classes. And they're just asking for this. Now, the plank is a really, really, really common exercise all around the world. It is an effective core exercise. It can be very, very useful for helping improving stability through the abdominals, and specifically improving what we call anti-extension abdominal strength. So teaching the body to resist hyperextending through the lower back. But one trap that a lot of people fall into is they just plank, complain, complain, complain every single day, every single class, every single session, just never improves. I've seen this in gyms all around the world. And trainers like to use the plank because it is an effective exercise, but it's also simple. It doesn't require equipment, doesn't require a huge amount of space, and they can just throw it in here and there. However, one trap that we often get is, we just plank all the time and it just never gets any better. So in this situation, what we want to look at is if you are stuck planking and pretty much any other type of exercise, you want to be smart about this because like any other type of strength training, with a core training, we want to ensure there is an element of progression because the body will get used to things relatively quickly. The body will get used to challenges relatively quickly. And we want to give it more and more stimulus or different stimulus over time to force it to change, to force it to adapt, to force it to get better. And the trap that people like with strength training, people naturally do that by adding a little bit extra weight or changing the repetitions or whatever. But with core training, people don't tend to do it. And specifically with plank, what people do is they'll just get in that trap of just every single week they just try to do a little bit more. They try to do another 5 seconds, another 5 seconds, another 5 seconds. And this will work for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, but eventually it's just going to plateau. It's not going to improve anymore. You're just going to be stuck and you can plank, plank, plank all the time, it just never improves. So in this situation, we want to be a little bit smart. We want to look at, okay, if I'm specifically trying to improve my plank, then how can I expose the body to different challenges in this planking movement, which will push it forward or force it to change and force it to adapt? And essentially here, we just want to look at different variations of this particular exercise. We don't want to do the same thing over and over, but give yourself different challenges. For example, you may do a weighted plank. So you may be able to do, hypothetically, you can do a 60-second plank with your body weight and you've been stuck on that for ages. Well, you may say, okay, I'm not going to do that for 3 or 4 weeks. And what I'm going to do for 3 or 4 weeks, I'm going to do a weighted plank. A weighted plank, what that involves is getting a weights plate or even a loaded backpack or a vest or whatever it may be, popping it on you and then holding the plank. Now, you may only be able to hold this for 20 seconds or 30 seconds with a little bit extra weight, but that's fine. Do that for 3 to 4 weeks. Try to get a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Then, if you go back to your normal plank after that, all of a sudden you probably will have improved because it's just a stimulus. It's a challenge the body. I'll give you to show you an example here, a way to let's pull it up so you can visualize what I'm talking about. So yeah, this is an exercise here. So basically, if you're in a gym, you can get a weights plate and literally just hold this. And if you are using a weight, even if it's only 5 kilos, you may be only able to hold that for a very small amount of time. But that's totally fine. Another option could be doing something like a seesaw plank, where instead of holding the plank in a static position and just holding, 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 what you do is you slowly shift your body weight forward and shift your body weight back. You'll notice immediately that is very much more difficult. That's very much more challenging. You'll burn out really quickly. So again, hypothetically, if you could hold a normal plank for 60 seconds, you may be only able to do this for 10 seconds at a time or 15 seconds at a time. But again, if you do this for 3 to 4 weeks or something like that, you'll get better. And let me pull it up, seesaw link. Just again, so you can visualize this. Who's got a video? Um, I'm like this. I'm literally just going forward and back, forward and back, forward and back, way, way, way harder. But this could be a progression. Or you may do just a different variation of plank. If you always do it on your elbows, maybe do 3 weeks of being up on your hands. Or if you always do it up on your hands, try 3 weeks doing it up on your elbows. And the idea behind this is we just expose the body to slightly different things. Now, I will sort of say, as a hiker, the plank is a means to an end in the sense of we are doing planking as a hiker to improve our abdominal endurance to help us on future adventures. So you don't have to get stuck in this thing of only planking. There's so many other ways of going about it. However, if you intentionally want to improve this, because a lot of people are like, hey, I do this all the time, I want to improve, this is kind of how you want to go about it. And then the other thing, or the final thing that I'll mention on this is, maybe just change different times in the workout. A lot of people will tend to do their their core training just at the end of a workout. They'll do a workout, a strength workout. In the last 5 minutes, they'll do a bunch of core. They'll do their planks there or whatever it may be. If that's you, simply just trying your planks at the start of a workout when you're fresh and when you're not fatigued, this may be enough to just push you over the edge and help you progress a little bit more. So if you're always doing it at the end, try it in your warm up for a few weeks, and that may improve it here. But ultimately, when it comes down to planks for hikers, core training should follow the same principles as your normal strength training. We want to progress it. We want to apply progressive overload, challenge it, give it new stimulus to force it to adapt and keep on getting better. And if you can do that, it's going to be really beneficial for you. So hopefully that helps. So with that being said, that's all the questions I had sent through for today. Nothing else has come through live. So yeah, I might wrap it up there. As I sort of said at the start of the call, if anyone is interested in this breathing mini course, it should be released in the next couple of days. But if you want to be on that pre-sale list, just flick me an email, flick me a message. I can get you sorted as soon as it comes out. But aside from that, if anyone does have any questions they'd like me to cover in future live Q&As, please reach out, just let me know. But aside from that, for anyone watching, thanks for watching. Hope you have a lovely